views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Welcome, good people of the Bronx and beyond. My name is Henry Ovalles, and I'm your host for Life in Art. On this show, we will bring you engaging and personal conversations with artists with whom you may not be familiar, people who have been working on their craft for at least a decade and are at a crossroads where passion meets necessity. We'll discuss creativity and inspiration with our guest artists, but also find out what it takes to balance the struggles of practical life while pursuing their passions. Our guest today is a jack of all trades. He is an administrator with the Hip to Hip Shakespeare Theater Company in Queens, as well as a performer and technical director. He has a long record of developing theatrical programs to help engage the youth, as well as performing and teaching with the Riverdale Children's Theater. Most recently, he was seen in the title role of Richard III for the Naiku Spoon Theater Company. Today, we learn about Guy Ventoliere's Life in Art. And here we are in the studio with Guy Ventoliere. Guy, thanks so much for joining us on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, sure thing. So we've run sort of in adjacent circles, and I've known of you and known you for a number of years, but oddly enough, I think this is probably the longest conversation that we will have, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, and I have known you for quite some time.
Yeah, a number of years. So tell me about you, Guy. Where were you born? Where did you grow up?
Born and raised in the Bronx.
In the Bronx?
Born in the South Bronx. Grew up around Tremont Avenue in the Grand Concourse, then moved on up to Marshallou Parkway. I've lived in neighborhoods as far as Woodlawn. I've lived over in Bedford Park, and I've lived over in White Plains Road. I've been all over.
Right, the whole Bronx map.
Thing. Yes, the whole thing.
And as far as your education, like where did you go to elementary school, high school,
yeah,
also in the Bronx?
I went to St. Simon's Stock, a Catholic school down on 181st Street in Ryer Avenue, quite a while ago. I graduated in 1978, to give you an idea of my age. Back then, you actually determined the neighborhoods by the precinct that you lived in, so near the 46th precinct.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, right there. And went to Cardinal Hayes High School down in the South Bronx, and then came here to this lovely campus, Lehman College.
Lehman College, and this is where you got your undergrad degree?
Yeah, well, I actually, I went to school here, left, and then came back again, and that's when I decided to pursue theater. And then I got into the CUNY BA program, which allowed me to combine 2 degrees to make one original degree. And so I actually
You could go to different
went to
campuses.
a lot of different campuses. And at the time, towards the end of my academic career, I moved to Manhattan. And,
I see.
And so I finished it up at Hunter College.
Okay. And tell me about your family life. You have any siblings or?
Yeah, no, only child, just me and my mother growing up.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, but a lot of really close-knit, a lot of friends.
Right, that you ended up considering brothers and
yes,
sisters.
and they're still my friends to this day.
Awesome.
And you know, I'm the one who moves to Manhattan and then to other boroughs, you know, but as many Bronx people do, they get married, get houses, and move north.
Right, I see.
So they're all there. But I have some cousins in Woodlawn still, and the rest migrated to Canada, actually.
I see. And you had pretty much a Catholic upbringing?
Yep. Yeah, I went through, well, my first year I went to this is really funny actually, my first year I went to a private school in Riverdale,
right.
Hoffman, since closed, but when I looked them up later on in life, I found out that it was actually where it was the YWCA where I was actually directing a play.
Oh, is that right?
So I was on the campus where I was.
And you didn't realize it at the moment?
Didn't even realize it. So I was directing a play where I did my first play, Mary Poppins, when I was in first grade.
First grade, yeah. that was when you first got on stage?
Sure thing, yeah.
And how about your mother? Does she have any sort of artistic inclinations?
Nah, she didn't. She passed away a little while ago, about 3 or 4 years ago. Oh, that's fine. You know, she was quite artistic.
Okay.
But unfortunately never had the opportunity to you know, really showcase her talents.
I see. So what do you think was, you know, when you were what you saw that made you sort of follow that path?
West Side Story.
Really?
Yeah, and I kind of confused acting with singing, and so when I still remember when I was very young, I used to tell everybody I wanted to be a singer, but I thought singers were actors.
I see.
Because I didn't know the difference.
Oh, okay. So you're saying I want to be a singer, but what you really meant is I want to be an actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
just watching West Side Story, like the movie for the first time,
I
is
mean,
that
I
what
just
did
was
it?
really into it, and you know, it was something I always wanted to do. I like to pretend, and I kind of liked the whole performance element of it.
Right.
As I got older, I realized that it was really theater that I liked, and not even necessarily film. I just love theater. I love everything about theater, and that's why I wanted to pursue it.
I see. So then let's go back to your first time on stage was Mary Poppins in the first grade?
Yeah, that was, yes.
Yes, I know your first.
I actually consider my first time on stage for a full-length play was here at Lehman. It was with a woman, Chanel Perry Ryder. I don't know if you ever got to know her.
Not, but I've heard a lot of her, about her, yes.
Wonderful woman, very well known in the theatrical community. And she was directing Plaza Suite. And I didn't know anything about acting. I never performed. I never acted, never took an acting class, really.
Right.
And went in, but they saw somebody new that they had never seen before, you know, this young guy. And so they gave me a chance. I had one line, and it was, "Mimsy, cool it." That's all I said.
That was the line?
At the end of the play, I knocked on the bathroom door and said, "Mimsy, cool it."
And all these years later, you still remember that line?
I still remember the line. It's like the only line out of the 132 plays I've done so far.
Right.
That's the only line I know or remember. That's not really true.
I see.
But then, maybe a year later, I had finally gotten up to the point where I got to do a lead, and it was Orphans by Lyle Kessler, directed by Bing Bills.
Oh, yeah.
And in the Studio Theater at Lehman College.
Yeah.
And then, just kept going, never stopped.
Right, and when do you think that, can you pinpoint it, was it that time with the first line that you think the bug bit you, or did that come later on?
Yeah, no, I think that it was actually, I took an acting class downtown with this woman, Deborah Savage, on the west side. And the very first time I tried it, I remember there was an improvisation in the classroom, and they divided the class into two, and they allowed us to come up with one. And there was somebody that was very aggressive in the class, this woman, and she's like, "I want to do war, and I want to pretend we're soldiers." And I just felt really silly. And I remember pretending to die, but just kneeling on my legs and just kind of lying on, looking away from where the teacher and the other students were and saying, "I'm never coming back, this is ridiculous."
Oh, boy.
But, it was something that I wanted to do to overcome my shyness as well. I came back, and several weeks later, I was in their advanced class, and the following year, I was teaching it. So I really progressed quickly.
Yeah, that was quick. And in that time period, how many plays had you worked on?
Oh, I don't really remember, but I mean, this year alone, I've done 8. So I just never stopped, and I was, I think I never got to really celebrate a St. Patty's Day because I was always in the theater.
Right, always in a rehearsal.
Yeah.
Everybody, it's nice outside and you're in the dark.
Always, yeah. I used to get so tanned when I was younger, I lost it.
Right, there you go. Yeah. And what is it, do you think, specifically about theater that calls your attention?
I love the live energy of it. I love the spontaneity of it, and then there's things that are untold or unrecognizable to me, and that feeds my passion. I mean, when I go into a space that, like Secret Theater where I just performed Richard III, the curtains are old, and the smell of the blacks and the heat of the lights, and seeing the crumpled up gels in the corner, and the lighting equipment that doesn't work over here, and and the echo of the room, and the smell of the black paint. It brings me home. It makes me really, really nostalgic for what was and what will be, and I wouldn't have it any other way. If I could, I could do it every day. I could just.
Yeah, and I think theater specifically, you're hitting on it, has those elements possibly more than any other art form.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think. So let's actually take a quick break, and when we come back, I want to dig into what you're doing with Hip to Hip and other things that you've done throughout your career.
Great.
So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more about Guy when we return.
People think I'm trash, but they're wrong. Today I'm just an aluminum can, but one day I could be a stadium.
Every budget, so don't accept defeat.
Now you can get covered and still buy me treats.
You take care of your pets. Now it's their turn to take care of you. Visit getcoveredamerica.org to learn about your health insurance options.
I already knew that I was going to go to college, from a young age. I definitely want to major in political science, become the mayor or something, make the situation better for other people. My name is Justin, and I am your dividend.
Welcome back to Life in Art. We are here with performer Guy Ventoliere. So Guy, I think Shakespeare has been important to you in your life and now with Hip to Hip Theater Company. So talk to me a little bit about, when that started and why it's important to you.
Yeah, I actually, one of the things that I recognized when I was younger here at Lehman and performing, there was a lot of parts that I was getting where I was like kind of the tough guy.
Right.
And I wanted to work on my diction, and Shakespeare was something that just extremely intimidated and frightened me. And so, kind of like how I turned over and said, even though I'm not gonna come back to this acting class, I came back. Same thing, I had to come back. I had to kind of combat something that was fearful to me, and Shakespeare was it. It was so foreign, it was like foreign language to me.
Yeah.
And so I really, really dived into it. The first thing I did was a small part in Othello, and then Midsummer Night's Dream here, playing
Also
Puck.
directed by Bing Bills?
Bing Bills, yeah, and I was Puck.
Right.
And then, which I fought for, because he did not want to cast me.
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, I fought for it. And then, when I got into the CUNY BA program, I decided that I wanted to get a degree in Shakespearean theater, so I combined medieval literature with classical theater to make a degree in Shakespeare. And, I just closed Richard III. It was my 20th performance of a Shakespearean play.
Wow.
To date so far.
Yeah.
And several years ago, 5 years ago, I wanted to get back into it because I had taken a break a little bit. I'd done a lot of directing, but I stopped acting for like 3 years.
Right.
And I wanted to do Shakespeare, and I wanted to do Shakespeare in the Borough. I didn't want to go back to New York.
Okay.
I want to get more involved with the community, and I did an internet search, found 2 companies doing that had just finished auditioning, and I reached out to both of them with the same letter.
Right, even
Just
though you were
changed
late for the
title.
audition.
Yeah. One was fully cast, which was Hip to Hip.
Okay.
And there was another group called the Gingerbread Players, and they had an opening for 12th Night. Oddly enough, it would have been my 3rd time doing it. I went and I got the part with them, but I wound up helping out Hip to Hip a lot. And Jason Moore was the artistic director, and I got along very well. And I think I filled a void technically,
Right.
and just really helped pick up the load because he was really by himself doing a lot of the stuff.
Okay.
And then since then, we've just been a team doing it, and I'm
Right,
so
and that
grateful.
relationship has been going on for about 5 years now?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
And I'm so great. I mean, it's a great group. It's there's great leadership there, and and I get the opportunity to really be creative and meet tons of wonderful people and get opportunity to people in my circle, not only from Lehman but from Hunter College, where I now pursue a graduate degree, and from other organizations, because that's really what I like to do, is bring people together.
Yeah, and I mean, and expose them to Shakespeare, because I know some of, some of the people of my graduating class for Lehman College, for example, that you've sort of dragged over to do theater. A lot of them, even though they went through their experience here, hadn't performed Shakespeare before, and then you sort of give them that opportunity to share something that's important to you, and I mean, to every actor it should be.
Yeah, the more I do it too, the more I realize that it's the least intimidating thing. Is do it. Do it with a Bronx accent. It'll probably be best. It's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, it takes some time, and I think audiences, as well as actors, find it intimidating, because over time, I don't know how it's happened, Shakespeare has sort of taken on this almost elitist, high class. I have to go on with my, almost as if I'm going to the opera to see it.
Yep.
And that's really not what it is at all. I mean, if you look at it historically, Shakespeare was writing with the groundlings, with people, throwing tomatoes there, and everything was stinky because no one bathed, and they would go out and come back in. So that's why Shakespeare will repeat, in different acts and different scenes. So this is what happened before. So, things of that nature. But
sometimes I think Shakespeare's turned over in his grave to see how proper it is.
Right, right.
Yeah, the focus on the, sometimes there's so much focus on the language and not just the fun.
Right. And then when you perform it, I think as an actor, that's really when you see like, oh, this is what all the, the fuss is about. This is really just rich and interesting. And I mean, I go back and forth as far as, Is it important to continue to perform Shakespeare as much as it's performed, or should we be doing more, contemporary new things? What's your take on that?
I think that there's always a place for Shakespeare. I love it; it's a passion. But I love exploring. Like right now, I'm directing Tennessee Williams, and one of his later pieces that after Night of the Iguana, the critics kind of railed him for years because they were used to like the Tennessee Williams of old, and so they didn't associate him with the playwrights like Beckett, Pinter, and Albee. Now they do, but then they didn't. I think that it's really nice to be able to take that that American poet and kind of work with him as well. And there's comparisons between Shakespeare and Tennessee Williams, and there isn't, and it's different. And I like doing Moliere, and I've done a ton of Moliere, and I know it's a lot of classics, but I've also done some very contemporary things recently. I did Red Noses, and I certainly have a history of doing a lot more contemporary stuff before I got into the classics. But I think there's a place for everything, and I think that Shakespeare should always be done. I think that it should always be taught, and I think that as an actor you should always attempt to try a little bit of it, and see if it fits you and if it's good for you, and see where see what works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we mentioned Bing Bills a couple of times in this interview. We should mention he was a longtime director of the theater program here at Lehman College and an inspiration to many.
Yes.
And you mentioned earlier also that with Hip to Hip, you were able to help them out sort of on the technical side. Yeah. So where did you pick up those skills, the backstage theater skills?
I think you know this. Ken Ross, who was the technical director of Lehman College for many years, he was one of my earliest friends. Him and Bing were the people I met in the beginning, and Ken, I didn't even know how to use a hammer, and Ken basically, brought me in. I still remember we were in the bar drinking after a night of performing.
People drinking after performance? I can't imagine.
Yeah, back then it was a lot different than now. And basically he was like, yeah, if you want to come up and help me tomorrow, it's good. I said, I'd love to help you. And he didn't believe me because a lot of the actors then, and they didn't have like these mandatory, things back then, didn't help. And I came back the next day and maybe not feeling great.
Right.
and I helped him, and he's like, wow, you did that fast. And then after that, we became good friends. He taught me how to build flats. And he got me my first job in like an audiovisual company doing stage carpentry.
Right.
And I'm, 6 years later, I was building sets for Saturday Night Live.
Wow.
It was just, something I picked up quickly and I really enjoyed, and it's helped my acting immensely. I mean, when I do something, I know the lighting, I know the carpentry and how the flat goes up and how to build it, and since then learned about other aspects like management and development and all that. But I love all aspects, and it was Ken Ross, our man here.
Yes, indeed, who also, inspired many and mentored many, including myself. So, and I mean, and I think it's important to speak to that. I always say that to students that I encounter about the importance of the technical aspects of it and the backstage aspects, and how much they can help you as an actor, because people don't realize, standing on the platform that you built just does something to the character that you're going to play also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I can't, quite in words describe why it is or what it is, but it just is.
Yes. Absolutely. It's so important, all the elements, and it just makes you a better actor to know them all.
Right.
And now, I mean, it's just knowing where that money's coming from.
Right.
And how hard it is to get publicity and to fill the seats, and there's all these other aspects to it. You just have such a deeper appreciation for your time on the stage, and you don't take anything for granted.
Yeah.
And it's so important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's take another break, and when we come back, I want to dig into you, in the corporate world and what that means with the money and how you survive and still work on your passion.
Excellent.
So we'll be right back after this break with more from Guy.
We finally bought a place.
You seriously have enough saved to do that?
We've been putting a little aside each month.
So at the end of the month, we have nothing left to save. How is my account overdrawn?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.
Don't let E. coli mosh with your food. An estimated 3,000 Americans die from a foodborne illness each year. You can't see these microbes, but they might be there. So always separate raw meat from vegetables. Keep your family safe at foodsafety.gov.
How can I help my daughter with her reading? Searching for help with dachshund breeding.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Information on hot water heating.
No. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out the words.
World music, playing track now.
No.
Let me try. Our daughter gets confused about which details in a story are important.
Which paper towels are most absorbent?
What?
Here are 5 product reviews.
Why are you not getting me?
See, I told you.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
For the 1 in 5 kids with learning and attention issues, this is what life can feel like. Explore understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues, designed to help your child thrive in school and in life. Understood.org, because understanding is everything.
And we're back on The Life in Art with Guy Ventoliere. So Guy, let's talk a little bit about your time sort of in the corporate world. At some point you decided that, you know, food needed to be put on the plate.
Yeah.
And how did you go ahead and manage that?
Yeah, I basically was the stage carpenter for quite a while, and went to Asia for a bit to do some directing and teaching. Came back, I was still in the AV world, audiovisual world, and the carpentry, and they had massive layoffs. And I remember I didn't know what I was going to do. And I searched the internet because I was doing a lot of children's stuff at the time as well on the side, teaching children in children's theater.
I see.
And I had the degree in Shakespeare theater. So I basically looked for Shakespeare or classics of children, and I got this job interview with the place called Children in the Classics, and that really changed my life because I did not know this. I just thought nonprofit. I didn't know anything carpenter. I'm going to be calling up people for money, but I'll find something soon enough and quit that job.
Mm-hmm.
They hired me as the director of development.
Wow.
Which means, you know, I was the guy responsible for the fundraising. And from there, I learned so many things. I even developed some programming that eventually, for introducing kids to Shakespeare, that eventually rolled out to 30 community-based organizations. I worked on all of these wonderful programs for kids in the arts, and it really taught me computers. I remember I sat down, I saw FYI. I'm like, what does this mean? I had no idea, you know, because I never got an FYI thing when I was a carpenter.
Right.
Anyway, and from there, I recognized that I really had to start making more money, and I got into telecom, actually.
Okay.
I used that as a springboard for that, saying, you know, it's hard to sell goodwill, and I was in kind of conferencing telecom for a while, and, you know, really got to a point where my contacts were C-level. I was making great money, traveling the world. My last job before I went back into the AV and carpentry world, I was responsible for $13 million in revenue annually. But the entire time I continued to direct. When I did Peter Pan, I was working for a telecom up here. So I continued, but I wasn't in it as much as I am now. And then finally, I wanted to get kind of something that was a little bit less, I'm not going to say stressful or demanding, but closer to home. And so now I'm back in this company that, you know, does lighting and stages, and I'm not building it. I'm the director of sales there. So, but you know, it's great because I'm closer.
No, and I mean, I think it's amazing that you've been able to sort of parlay the tools that you've picked up over the years, and still, you know, when you go into these other jobs that you might not think of off the top of your head as something that would be satisfying to a creative person, that you've made it work for you somehow. Well,
one of the things that I've always kind of tried to instill in those that I mentor or that intern for me, or even my students, was that there's always this negative connotation towards the business world. And I got to tell you, I mean, I've been with artists who made fun of the guy walking down the street with a cell phone. Now, naturally, this is 25 years ago.
Right, when cell phone was still.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, at the same time, when I started corporate America and I told people I was an actor, they were like, that's so admirable, that's great. And usually they have an arts background. It's so funny. So, you know, we're all the same, and I think it's so important. Well-rounded artists should know, you know, elements of corporate. It's like the Miser technique. It tells you to read everything and know everything, you know. And so it's really, really important. And I'm very grateful and thankful that I got to work in that environment.
Right. And those environments have then, helped you to gain even more knowledge to be able to help out these, community theater groups and other groups that with the great work that you've been doing.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about Hip to Hip. Talk to me a little bit about your experience recently playing Richard III and that theater company, the Nico Spoon Theater Company.
Nico Spoon Theater Company, co-produced with Identity Theater Company as well. It was a co-production. Both theater groups, their mission is to afford opportunity, just blind casting, and whether that's color, gender, and disability. And one of the things they do specialize in is affording opportunity for actors that normally wouldn't get cast in a role.
Wow.
Because of a disability. And so they decided to do Richard III. I'm so honored, so blessed that they reached out to me too. And they wanted to spin it. So Richard III was perfect, and that was me. And I have a lot of flaws, trust me. But in this, I was the perfect one, and everybody else was actually disabled. There were a few people with disabilities that had to drop out, and so they got, people without a disability to portray one.
Right.
But all, 12 actors, we had a person in a wheelchair. Anne has one leg.
Okay.
A person with palsy and another person, with slight autism, and there's and it was a great production and a great group of people, and hard workers, and really, really unique, And we actually today, I think it came out. There's an article about us, and our picture is in American Theater Magazine.
Look at that! That's awesome.
So it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it's quite that's great. I mean, I can't think of a better mission statement. That's really, really great.
Yeah.
So as we're winding down here, Guy, one of the questions we like to ask is, if for someone coming up saying to you that they want to pursue a life in art, what would your advice be to them?
Just, make sure that you're doing it for the right reason, and if you're truly, truly passionate about it, you're just going to continue to do it and keep doing it. And that's what I suggest. I mean, keep doing it. And if I could speak to theater. If you want to be a theater artist and you want to act and you want to perform, learn about lighting and sets and what goes in behind it, and learn about all of the different aspects and costuming and as much as you can, and just breathe it, live it, love it, and do it, and always try to help others get them in and do it, and network, but not network in this, just help out, do things.
Right, not networking the sort of superficial, let's see what this guy can do for me type of way. But
exactly. I mean, after I had done 80 plays, I saw somebody doing a play at the Met, and I told them that I want to do the play, just let me carry on the candle, and they gave me the opportunity.
Really?
There's no ego involved. I just wanted to be on the stage and carry on a candle. So
yeah.
That's the thing. I think just really got to do it.
Right, just keep at it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think actually, I mean, we always run out of time so quickly, but I think that'll do it. How do you feel about it? Are you okay with it?
It's great, and I just appreciate any time that anyone allows me to talk about myself.
Well, I certainly enjoyed, hearing you talk about yourself and everything that you've done, and I'm sure that our audience will as well.
Thank you very much.
So, as always, we're out of time. I want to thank Guy for sharing his life in art with us, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. We also want to encourage you to connect with us on social media. Please visit us on Facebook and YouTube at A Life in Art, and Instagram and Twitter at A Life in Art TV. We'll be back with more stories from emerging artists when we return with A Life in Art. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Me too. Yeah, we gotta talk more often.